The Senate hearing chamber was unusually tense that morning. Cameras lined the walls, reporters filled the press benches, and the nation tuned in live. On one side sat Senator Tim Scott, polished, confident, rehearsed. On the other side sat Representative Jasmine Crockett, bold, unapologetic, and ready to defend herself, and, as she often said, the truth that too many are afraid to speak. This was no ordinary hearing. It was billed as a joint congressional committee on ethics and accountability, but everyone watching knew what it really was, a showdown. For weeks, conservative commentators had attacked Crockett for her unapologetic tone in interviews, while progressives rallied around her as the new voice of fearless resistance. Tim Scott, eyeing a national spotlight and eager to prove his strength, saw an opportunity. The cameras zoomed in as Scott leaned forward, voice calm but cutting. "Congresswoman Crockett," he began, "you come before this committee preaching about fairness, justice, and ethics. Yet, time and again, your words reek of hostility. You demonize your opponents, you inflame division, and you refuse to accept responsibility for your own rhetoric. Do you believe this is the conduct becoming of a public servant?" Gasps rippled through the chamber. Reporters, pens scratched furiously. Scott's attack was sharp, crafted to not only wound but also to draw headlines. Crockett tilted her head slightly, resting her chin on her hand. She didn't answer right away. She let the silence stretch, the cameras lingering on her composed face. Then, with a smile that was half amusement and half warning, she replied. "Senator Scott," she said slowly, "I find it fascinating that you want to lecture me on rhetoric while sitting on a platform built entirely on it. You talk about unity but vote against the very policies that would bring it. You talk about ethics but align yourself with those who have shredded it. If my words sting, it's because I am speaking truths that your side would rather keep buried." The chamber stirred again. The exchange had only just begun, but already it was electric. Scott pressed on. "That's a nice deflection, Congresswoman. But the fact remains, your comments on national television, calling opponents cowards and hypocrites, undermine the very institution you claim to defend. Do you deny that?" Crockett leaned forward now, her eyes locked on him. "Do I deny calling out hypocrisy when I see it? Absolutely not. Do I deny pointing out cowardice when people hide behind talking points instead of standing up for ordinary Americans? Not for a second. Senator, if telling the truth makes you uncomfortable, that says more about you than it does about me." The audience murmured. Reporters typed faster. The moderator tried to maintain order, but the clash was too captivating. Scott smirked, trying to maintain control. "You've made a career out of playing the victim, Representative. But the reality is, Americans are tired of your divisive tactics. They want solutions, not soundbites. Can you offer anything other than outrage?" Crockett's smile widened. Her supporters in the room knew that look, something devastating was coming. "Senator, you accuse me of outrage, but let's be honest, outrage is the currency of politics. The difference between you and me is that my outrage comes from injustice, while yours comes from ambition. You lecture me about solutions, yet I don't see you standing with working families, with women fighting for their rights, with communities begging for accountability. If speaking up against oppression makes me divisive, then so be it. History is filled with people who were called divisive right before they were proven right." The room erupted in applause before the moderator banged the gavel for silence. For the first time, Scott hesitated. His carefully planned attack lines were colliding with Crockett's unshakable fire. The clash had only begun, but already it was clear, this wasn't just politics. This was a battle for the narrative of America itself. The cameras captured every flicker of expression, every sharp word. Viewers at home sat on the edge of their seats. And as Crockett prepared to deliver her epic clapback, one that would leave Scott grasping for words, everyone knew they were witnessing a political moment that would be replayed for years to come. The gavel slammed again. Order in the chamber. The moderator barked. But the audience couldn't contain themselves. Even some of the reporters, trained to stay impartial, were biting their lips to hold back grins. Senator Tim Scott adjusted his tie, trying to recover. He hadn't expected Jasmine to meet his polished barbs with a steady calm. His advisors had told him she would grow flustered, that her firebrand style would come across as emotional and reckless. Instead, she was dismantling his arguments piece by piece. He leaned forward again, voice rising just slightly. Representative Crockett, you love to throw accusations. You talk about injustice, about hypocrisy. But let's talk about you. You've used your platform to demonize good people simply because they disagree with you. You've accused leaders who've sacrificed for this country, of corruption and cowardice. Isn't it true that your brand is not about truth, but about tearing others down to lift yourself up? A hush fell. The line was sharp, crafted to sting. Scott sat back in his chair, confident that this was the blow that would shift the energy in his favor. Crockett didn't move for a moment. Her eyes stayed fixed on him, unblinking, calm. Then she slowly reached for the microphone, her voice steady but laced with steel. "Senator Scott, let me make something very clear," she began. "I don't need to tear anyone down to lift myself up. My story, my fight, my community, they lift me every single day. The people I represent don't send me here to flatter powerful men like you. They send me here to tell the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it is." She leaned in closer. "And you want to talk about leaders who sacrificed? Let's talk about real sacrifice. The mothers working 2 jobs while Congress plays politics. The veterans waiting months for healthcare. The young people drowning in debt while billionaires get tax cuts. That's sacrifice. That's struggle. And if calling out the people who perpetuate that suffering makes me the villain in your story, then I will wear that crown proudly." The room exploded again. Cameras flashed. Even the moderator couldn't suppress the hint of a smile. Tim Scott opened his mouth, but Crockett wasn't finished. Her voice grew stronger, her words precise, building momentum like a wave. "You say I'm divisive. But let's not pretend, Senator, that division didn't exist long before I arrived here. Division is children locked in cages. Division is women told their bodies don't belong to them. Division is telling black communities to wait for justice while politicians smile for the cameras. I don't create division, I expose it. And you can't fix what you refuse to face." There it was, the clapback that would live on in headlines and social media for days, weeks, even months. Tim Scott's face tightened. He tried to interject, but Crockett's voice rolled right over him. "You asked if I offer anything other than outrage. I do. I offer truth. I offer accountability. I offer a reminder that this chamber does not exist to comfort the powerful, it exists to serve the people. And if my passion unsettles you, Senator, maybe it's because you've mistaken comfort for leadership." The words landed like a thunderclap. The audience audibly gasped. Scott blinked rapidly, his rehearsed composure finally slipping. For the first time that morning, he didn't have a line ready. His lips parted as if to speak, but nothing came. The silence stretched. Cameras zoomed in mercilessly. Jasmine Crockett sat back in her chair, calm once again, a small smile tugging at her lips. She didn't need to gloat. The silence spoke for itself. Across the chamber, even some of Scott's allies shifted uncomfortably. The exchange had been meant to showcase his control, his authority. Instead, it had become a masterclass in rhetorical dominance, Crockett's dominance. The moderator cleared his throat. "Thank you, Representative Crockett. Thank you, Senator Scott. We will now proceed with the next line of questioning." But everyone in the room knew the hearing was effectively over. Nothing that followed would eclipse what had just happened. Within minutes, clips of Crockett's clapback flooded social media. Hashtags trended worldwide. Hashtag Crockett clapback. Hashtag speechless Scott. Hashtag truth to power. Commentators scrambled to frame the moment. Supporters hailed her as fearless, a voice for the voiceless. Critics scrambled for damage control, claiming she was too aggressive, though even they struggled to deny the impact of her words. And Tim Scott. He issued a brief statement later that evening, but the damage was done. His silence on live TV had become a symbol, a moment replayed endlessly, looping on news broadcasts and comedy shows alike. As Jasmine Crockett left the chamber that day, reporters swarmed her. "Congresswoman, how do you feel after today's exchange?" one shouted. She paused, glanced back at the cameras, and said with a quiet smile, "I feel like I did my job." And just like that, she walked away, leaving behind a stunned chamber, a speechless senator, and a nation buzzing with the echo of her words.